All right, Umakantji, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure, Abhijit. I know we met a long time back in
Indeed.
Pondicherry,
Yes.
but it's such a pleasure to be back.
Pleasure to have you on the podcast and pleasure to meet you again. So we're going to discuss AI and everything that's to do with AI. So to start off, I asked our friend Perplexity to create an intel briefing about Umakant Soni.
Wow.
So it spat this out, everything you need to know about you. So it says that you are the chairman and co-founder of AI Foundry, you're the co-founder and former CEO of ARTPARK, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, general partner, Art Venture Fund, founding partner and advisor, Pi Ventures, senior AI advisor, Sweden India Business Council, and so much more. So how did you get into the field of AI? How did that happen? What's your journey been like?
Yeah, so I'm an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and started my career with Wipro.
Mm-hmm.
And one fine day, actually, I came across an interesting article by Ray Kurzweil in 2008. And it talked about that some of AI is going to be more than human intelligence by 2029. And that article really freaked me out.
Okay.
I went back and I did the calculations over the weekend and I found that, he might have a real sense of clarity around that. So I went up to my boss and I said, I'm resigning.
Okay.
because I want to work on this.
Okay.
And so that was the start of the journey. I quit Wipro, started India's first AI chatbot company in 2009 called Vimagino.
Okay.
This was almost 3 years before OpenAI started.
I see.
We built a chatbot with 3 of my co-founders. One came from Yahoo, another came from Google, one more came from Adobe.
I see.
And we got it live working on yatra.com and India Time Shopping.
I see.
So super early days, nobody knew in India about chatbots. In fact, chatbots was considered kind of like a negative term.
Okay.
So it was very interesting. Everybody said that you should go to Valley and you should create such a company there. But my father was very sick at that time.
I see.
He was in later stages of Parkinson.
I see.
And I couldn't leave him. And so I stayed here. But I repented that, somebody has to move to Valley to create these kind of companies. And after he died, I actually spent a year researching what makes Silicon Valley so good. And I found that, we have all the talent in the world, right? We probably also have capital. It is misallocated. We have. What we don't have is ecosystem. And that was the big learning that, Silicon Valley has evolved ecosystem. There's actually a very nice book about it called The Rainforest Model of Innovation.
Okay.
And that was a big insight for me. I came back and I said, okay, let's how do we create an ecosystem? Because nobody had a playbook on that. So one of my mentors, Subrata Mitra, he founded Excel Venture Partners for India. He suggested to start a fund.
Okay.
So I said, okay, let's do that. Let's create India's first AI-focused venture fund.
I see.
And I started with Manish. He was my co-founder in that.
When was this?
This was in 2015, 16.
Still very early days.
Super early. In fact, we were thrown out by quite a few people. It's like, why are you trying to do this fund
I see.
in India? You should do that in Valley. And I said, that's the only reason why I want to do a fund. Because, something of this nature doesn't exist in India, right? Where is the risk capital to back these kind of companies? And, we got good support from, Govt of India. We got good support from IFC, World Bank. And we were incredibly lucky to get, feedback and support from entrepreneurs like Bini Bansal, Mohandas Pai, Sunil Kant Munjal, and Girish Matrubhutam, all of them actually supported us. And we got this fund started. We backed around 14, 15 companies. Some of them are now becoming really recognizable. There's a company called Vyasa, which is probably the largest mental health platform in the world.
I see.
So they actually have chatbots, which so you can, in fact, Vyasa is Rishi Vyasa. I mean, that's how it started.
Okay.
But now there's 60% of the traffic comes outside of India.
I see. Wow.
So they're more famous in US and Europe now.
Okay.
So US now they're working with 6 different insurance companies. In UK they go through NHS. And in fact they have more than 600 million conversations on their platform.
I see.
In fact, when the COVID hit, the government of Singapore bought it for all of their residents.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. We saw the template with these companies through PI as well, that you could grow these AI companies in India because talent exists. You provide them with risk capital, and there's a lot of data, right? So you could actually grow. AI needs data to grow, right? So you could create some unique AI companies out of India, and then they can go global, right? So we saw the template. That is very interesting. So at that time, India was trying to come out with the national AI strategy. So I went back to NITI Aayog and I said, I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. And we helped in writing the national AI strategy.
Okay.
And we envisaged that, while this transition has started, there's a fund now, but you need a lot of groundwork, right? You can't do it with Jugaad. Right? You need to build a, real innovation and research ecosystem
from the ground up.
From the ground up. So there were two large missions in that that were envisaged. One was called National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems.
Okay.
Which is $500 million of investment. And this is probably was happening for the first time. It was led by DST, Department of Science and Technology. Second one was the India AI mission. I think you must have been hearing in news about it.
Yes.
Of course, it took a while to come out of it. It was like almost like 4 years, and I mean, thanks to initiative by Ashwini ji and Abhishek ji. I think it is now starting to come together really well. So together they represent 1.75, I think close to $1.75 billion of investment into AI research and innovation ecosystem in India, and I think that lays quite a good groundwork, right? So in fact, ARTPARK, India's first AI and Robotics Technology Park, that's what basically ARTPARK stands for. Was started with support from DST. They gave 170 crores and Government of Karnataka gave another 60 crores. 230 crores of seed grant. And we have now, I think, 30 companies in AI and I think 12 robotics companies, drones, robots crawling, flying around. All of those companies are coming about. So I think now we actually are getting closer to having an ecosystem. Right? And that is where we feel that now we have the ecosystem. Now we have risk capital, not just PI, but there are a whole bunch of other funds which are now starting to, put together things in AI. In fact, everybody right now, if you don't go with an AI pitch, they don't invest in you. Right? So while that is coming along, what we felt was that we also need a very unique playbook, right? Like what basically, is the key strength that India has got, right? And how can we project that forward in this big new evolution, right? Because it's a big new evolution, right?
Yes,
so if I look at it, right, like 1975, we had connected up to 1 billion places with rail, with road, with air, with water, right? And you could sell the excess production of one place to another.
Yes.
Then in sense was the, height of the industrial economy, right? Then by 2009, we had connected up to 1 billion people, right? With internet, with email, with early part of social media.
Yes.
Right? And you could sell the access knowledge of one person to another. Then in sense was kind of like the knowledge economy, right? But by 2030 or 35, we're going to see 7.5 billion people connected with 30 billion machines, right? And that's what we're calling it, the age of intelligence. I call it intelligence economy, right? But it's a huge shift, right? So if India has to play a part in that shift, right? We need to become the creators.
Yes.
We need to become the leaders, right? We need to have our own point of view, right? Which is rooted in our tradition, our culture, our learnings, right? And we need to create maybe what I dare say, call it a unique space for humanity, right? Because I see very clearly, of course, the Silicon Valley, has a lot of capital behind it.
Yes.
Right? And, they have the large tech companies which have a lot of data, right? Facebook has all of your data, Google has a lot of your data, right? And they are creating their model, right?
Based on the data.
Based on the data, right? And they're selling it back to you. But I see that model is fundamentally flawed in two ways.
Okay.
Right? One is that I see the challenge. One is that the data attribution, right? So internet was not created only by Google or Facebook.
That's right.
It was all created by everybody. right?
Yeah.
Now we have, kind of like digested that internet, right? And created it into a kind of like a giant brain, right? And that through ChatGPT and other things, you're able to query, right? So it's a massively giant brain. And it's a very useful brain.
Very
right?
useful.
Yeah. I mean, each one of us is in some way or the other trying to leverage that brain, right? But if the creators are not paid back, right? That giant brain may not sustain, right? See, it's not that it's got created one time, but the world is changing all the time, right? Now, if you don't have any reward in putting your knowledge out in the internet, that's starting to happen, right?
Yes.
With more bots than people reading the internet, right? There is less and less incentive for people to, throw out their original thoughts on the internet, right? So, in some ways, the lack of data attribution will end up killing the internet, right? The second challenge that I see is that because the economic model is to, in some sense, I've invested a lot, now I need to take it out, right? With AI, the danger is that it can become exploitative, right? So if your objective function is only making money, right? It can become a challenge because, AI will, use that objective function to decide almost everything, right?
So it looks at everything for the function that I want to make as much money as possible out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, what has happened? Last 1 year or so, there has been a 15% rise in the amount of screen time. Not just, people who are typically have to be online for work, but it's across, right?
Social media, essentially.
Social media, everybody, right? So in some sense, it could, if I play that model out, we might just become scroller humans, right?
So it captivates you. It keeps you hooked to the screen, right?
Yeah, in fact, I've got, limits on all my social media apps just because, I realized that, it's going to consume me in some sense, right?
And it's going to affect your mental state as well if you are hooked to the screen.
You are in a constant state of a bubble. Right?
Yeah, and it's giving you dopamine hit after dopamine hit.
Yeah, and that's like when we were growing up, I remember that there was this massively influential movie called Matrix that came out.
Yes.
1999.
Yes. Yeah.
And we were in the campus in IIT Kanpur, and I remember that we actually had to screen it 3 times so that we could understand it. It was and even then we couldn't understand it much. But I see that there was a. If you have not watched it, I would strongly encourage you to go and watch.
Super relevant. It's
super relevant.
Absolutely brilliant movie.
I watched it along with my kids a year back, and they were also blown away. It was like, wow, this happened in 1999. It was like, wow. So in that movie, like they talk about that, that human mind has been taken over, right? It's been, in some sense, if we merely become consumers of AI instead of becoming the creators, right? I feel that we are massively shortchanging ourselves. On the other side, you have US now with DeepSeek. China has demonstrated that they are actually a big role to play as well.
Yes.
But I see now DeepSeek innovators being now called the national treasures. And, there's a whole. I see that because it's a more authoritarian regime, right? In some ways, they would be looking to play this out in a way that, you have autonomous machines ruling over semi-autonomous people, right?
Yes,
so on one hand, you have scroller humans, and on the other hand, you have semi-auto human. Right?
Pretty dystopian, isn't it?
Very dystopian. In fact, there's a beautiful movie, 2049, Blade Runner.
I haven't watched it yet. I hear it's great.
You should watch it because it's actually better than
the
original one.
I see.
Ridley Scott has done an amazing job.
I see.
But it's also very dark.
I'm sure.
And it really reminds you that what the consequences of our choices are, right? Like, are we going to see this world where there is a few set of people, or shall I say AI overlords, which have trillions of dollars at their disposal, and we have to depend upon their mental health and
Right.
well-being. Because if they go rogue or they go, to tangents, we could be landing up in a soup.
So we essentially end up serving the AI overlords.
AI overlords. And on the other side, you have maybe, machines which are going to limit us, right? But my sense is that in India, we have studied, human consciousness and the brain,
Thousands
how the
of years
body,
we've been doing it. Yeah.
right? Thousands of years, right?
Yes.
So in some sense, right? I mean, we probably have studied human mind for the longest period of time in the history.
Yes.
Right? And there is enough evidence in terms of psychology. I mean, I was reading Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan's book on Upanishads, and I was like blown away. It's like, I'm trying to also meditate and understand. Right? Last 4 years, somebody actually remarked me that you're talking about AI consciousness and how AI will evolve, but you have not understood human consciousness at all. And that, thought or suggestion actually struck me deeply that yes, true. I have not really explored what it means to be a human, right? So on one track on AI, another track is like I'm very consciously trying to explore the potential of the human mind. And more of that exploration has convinced me that we have hardly scratched the surface, right? So while, we have Sam Altman, I know he means, well, and others talking about, super intelligence and, AI consciousness and, people feeling the AGI. I think it's not really touched where human potential can go. So if we limit it very early on, right, because we have these massive systems coming around us, it will be the travesty of this, of the planet Earth, because we've not understood something. I mean, it happened with India, right? Like the Britishers came, they hardly understood us.
They didn't
right?
care to understand us. They didn't want to.
Yeah, exactly. And as a result, I mean, it's not that they lost out; it's the whole world has lost out, right? So, so I think in some ways, I think we need to understand this more deeply, and we need to evolve a way. So we've been thinking about it, right? Like, what is the right model, right? How do we solve this data attribution problem?
Before we go there, for the audience, let's first understand what AI is. Where did AI come from? I mean, we have had computers, which some people have thought of in the past as thinking machines or whatever.
Yeah.
But where did the concept of AI come from, and how did it suddenly become a big deal in the past few years?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very pertinent question. And my apologies.
No, not at all.
We are in this AI bubble, right?
So let's
last
go
15 years, 16 years, and we don't talk much about beyond the set of people that
because
know.
most people have absolutely no idea what AI is. They are oblivious to what's happening, and this is a transformative inflection point in our history. Actually, we don't know it's happening in real time right now. So let's talk about what is AI. Where did it come from?
So it's very interesting. 1950 was the year when Alan Turing came up with this Turing test. Okay, and he wrote about it. And it's very interesting. Of course, he was very poorly understood by his own country.
He was very badly mistreated by his country.
Yeah, in fact, there's a beautiful movie on it. If anybody wants to, know more about it, I think the movie is a great beginning to understand Alan Turing. And he came up with this Turing test that, if you can get AI to produce output which can confuse a human being, right? That where it is coming from. Is it coming from
a machine or
a human? Yeah. Then you have achieved some kind of parity.
So as long if the let's say you have a screen, on the other side of the screen, either there's a machine or a human, and you're talking to it, communicating with it through text or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell whether it's a human being or a machine, then that whatever is on the other side has passed the Turing test.
Passed the Turing test. But it was a very interesting time, right? And of course, people, as a researcher, so this is 1950, right? We are in 2025, 75 years. Right?
75 years.
So slowly people have been progressing. They've been building things, right? Which will, demonstrate one part of intelligence or understand one part, but then it will break down. In 2009-10, right? This was pre-deep learning, right? We were building these chatbots, right? And we had to write almost 500,000 lines of working code.
I see.
To mimic what ChatGPT is doing with, almost 10,000 lines of working code. Right?
So what's changed?
Yeah. So I think one big inflection point was deep learning,
Okay.
right? Where they realized that, you sort of like, if you can parallelize, right? So like and that's why I will try to, throw a few acronyms. I hope the audience is able to understand, right? So CPU's central processing unit, right? Most of the computers work on that.
They used to have CPUs in the past.
They used to have CPUs in the past. So they process things sequentially. Right? But GPUs were completely different because, as NVIDIA founder says, right, they were trying to mimic the real world. The real world, means that our brain processes things in parallel. Right? So people had been thinking about these, neurons and how do you mimic or create artificial neurons, right? The biggest challenge was the compute, right? Because the compute wasn't there, right? So
what is compute?
When you say compute, it's basically kind of a processor on which you run algorithms, right? So in 2000, 2001, right, we used to actually have a supercomputer in IIT Kanpur, right? So those initial, people were building these neural networks, right? You could only run them on supercomputers, right? But then in 2009, 8-9, right? In fact, one of our batchmate was involved in one of the early experiments on GPUs. He was working with Andrew Ng and others, right? They showed that you could run it on, GPUs or graphical processing units, as they call it.
But the overall...
So they repurposed GPUs, which were meant to, work on animation.
Animations and graphics, right? That was the original purpose.
Yeah, that was the original purpose. But the researchers found out that it does a great job of parallelizing and making these neural networks work. So suddenly neural networks started working.
So what's a neural network? It's a mimicking of the human brain, is it?
Yeah. So basically, if I see, it's a simplified version of a human brain.
Okay. The connections between the synapses and all that.
Yeah. So basically, every time we look at something, right, you get a feedback loop, right? So let's say if I have to identify a cat or maybe a dog, right? We don't have to think twice about it now, right? But when we were very, very small, as a kid, right, you might have seen dog for the first time, cat for the first time. Then your parent might have told you, or father or mother, stay away from this. It's a cat. It can bite.
It's got claws.
Claws and everything, right? And then you kept seeing, and then you're like, okay, you associated cat with that kind of a shape, right? So we do this association very naturally.
Yes.
We don't even think about it, right? So when people started, training, these on these big data sets. So AlexNet was big collection of images, right? And then they trained that, okay, if I show you all of these images, right, and I tell you who these images are, and I show you a new image, can you really identify whether this new image is a cat or a dog or any other animal?
Okay.
Right? So this was a big breakthrough that it was able to identify, right?
Okay.
And that actually was the early part of this deep learning, right? And they showed that if you use the neural networks, right, which mimic sort of like a human brain in some ways. Of course, at that time, the neural networks did not have that many layers.
Okay.
Right? So more layers you have, more denser the neural network is, more closer it is to, where we end up with.
So do you need more compute for that?
So you need more compute, you need a lot more data as well to train it with, right? So it's not a program that I write. So if I look at it, right, in 2009-10, when we were building chatbots, it was more like, this is an algorithm, right? I write it, right? And then, I feed data into it and I get an output.
And it's completely predictable.
Completely predictable to a large degree, right? Whereas with deep learning, what we started doing is that we just started showing it, okay, this is, so you kind of like grow a neural network. Just like the way we grow a brain, right? When we grow up physically, we also grow up, people say, no, we grow up mentally, right? So similar way you grow these neural networks.
So it gets more and more mature over time.
Yeah. So if you give a lot more data, then you can actually, get and a lot more compute because you need to process that data.
Yes.
Right? So just like the way if I give you all the gyan in 2-hour podcast, it's difficult for you to process, right? You will take many days to unpack it. Oh, this is what he said, right?
That's right.
So similarly, you need to train it for a period of time. Right. So what happened because ChatGPT was the first time many people got to know about it, right? Because we've been at it for a while, right? So deep learning was working in one area, right? So you showed, let's say there's a company called SigTuple, right? They're applying AI to pathology.
Okay.
Right? So if you have dengue and you are suspecting dengue, right? Typically you had to take a blood test.
A blood test, yes.
Right? And the blood test will be then taken. So if you're staying in a small town, right? They'll take the blood test, ship it to Bombay, right? ThyroCare will look at it and it will give you the result and it will travel back.
Yeah.
Right? But they developed this technology that you can just take that, prick, you create a slide out of it.
Okay.
You look at it, right? And then it is able to analyze, right? Among all the images it has seen, right? Whether this has dengue or not.
So just by looking at the slide, the spot of blood in a slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? But it was really effective only understanding about dengue, malaria, right? But I cannot take that algorithm, right? Or the neural network that I've grown, right? And apply it into identifying whether, this can answer questions about maybe logistics.
Okay.
Right?
Or maybe whether this is a mango or an orange.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can apply to other such things.
Yeah. Mango and orange, it may still manage, but I think definitely not something which is far apart from his domain. Right?
Very different domain.
So the deep learning was very good, right? It was a big breakthrough, right? You could make things work, but in a very focused area, right? So that's why the driving was a big challenge, right?
Okay.
So autonomous driving was a big challenge.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because people thought okay, we just give it a lot of data about traffic, but traffic is far more diverse.
Chaotic.
Very chaotic, right? If you come to India, you have dogs and cows and everybody on the road. Right? It's a very democratic country, right? We allow everyone, right? So those algorithms, they all failed, right? Because they were taught to recognize one thing, but beyond that they could not generalize, right? So when GPTs came, right? This was a very powerful moment, right? Because for the first time, right, the transformer approach, right, the attention paper that threw open that approach, people realized that it could generalize across, right? So not only it was capable in answering about, let's say, if you feed the entire knowledge of the internet, right, and you say, okay, I've trained it on everything. And by the way, the training is not easy, right? So literally you have to create a massive, compute set, right? You have to link it all together. So you need massive number of GPUs, right? And I'm talking about 1 lakh GPUs.
Yeah,
right?
there you go. That sort of scale.
That sort of scale, right? And it's not easy to even come up with that kind of cluster, right? So these are actually massive innovations. So
yes.
GPU was an innovation. Running these deep learning neural networks on a GPU was a big innovation. Then came this big inflection point in this transformer approach. Right?
So what's the transformer approach? I mean, theoretically, it was believed for a long time you can't have AIs because Marvin Minsky said so. But then things changed.
But he also talked about society of mind. So I think at that time he was running these mind experiments, thought experiments, right? But his writing is actually interesting. I again started rereading Marvin Minsky.
Oh, he's very interesting
It's very interesting.
That's right.
So you're right actually that one way to I'm talking about from 2009, 10 to almost 2017, 18. People thought that you couldn't generalize across. So the way you are going to build AI is that you're going to have these deep learning models, right? And you're going to cobble together or create an ensemble of these models, right? And that's how you're going to approach it. Right?
So is it the transformer approach that changed everything?
Yes. So the transformer was a very interesting way where, in a very layman's term, right, it allowed you to do what they call a zero-shot learning, right? Where in some sense, like I could give it a prompt about, now ChatGPT, you can try it out, right? Like you can ask a question about, you're a student, you're doing a homework, you want to know about history, you ask a history question, it will go back and it will, create its own answer, right? And come back to you like a human being would do, right? But then you go and ask about, like, recently my sister was not doing well, and I was feeding information and getting some answers back, right? And it was pertaining to her medical history and all of that stuff, right? And it was actually able to answer back, right?
Okay.
So you see the difference that, it's not just one, domain,
yes,
but it is going across domains. And that's when it started to hit the general public that, oh, this is super useful because I can ask anything.
Essentially, any question.
Any question.
Give you useful
right?
answers.
So if I unpack it a bit in a very layman's term, right? I'm just trying to keep it very generic for the audience. We literally loaded the entire knowledge of the internet on this massive bed of GPUs, right? Which are interconnected with really fast links, right? So, and we let it train, right? So what does training means, right? So
what is training? So essentially, I want to ask you, how do you create a ChatGPT-like thing?
Yeah.
How was that done?
Yeah.
So first of all, you need a huge ensemble of GPUs all linked together.
Yeah, because I think Ilya had this insight that you scale with more
Ilya
data.
Sutskever.
Yeah, and that was very interesting because like more data you give it, the larger the brain will grow, right? So in some sense, like we are all limited by our own brain, right? What we see, what we observe, right? But internet is kind of like sum of all our observations.
All of it, yes.
Right? So it was a fascinating insight, I would say, right? Where they said, okay, let's get all of the knowledge. So there's something called as common crawl. Okay. So you basically take all the knowledge from common crawl, right? You put it on top of these GPUs, right? And then you make these predictions, right? So there is something called as, so the entire approach of Transformer works on prediction for what's the next sentence, next word, or token is going to be, next word is going to be. So let's say if I have to do this autocomplete, right? So I say, I am going to Mumbai, right? Now, if I omit Mumbai, right, and I say, I am going to, so it can guess that, oh, it's going to be kind of like a place, right? Because I'm going to somewhere,
yes,
right? And if it says Mumbai, and this is what people have talked about, that yes, I'm going to Mumbai, right? Then it knows that it's thinking about what could be the next word is correct, right? I'm
so
just trying to be.
It's a probabilistic approach.
So it's trying to predict the next word.
What's the most probable next word?
What's the most probable next word? Now, if I encourage it to think in terms of there's something called as like how much amount of information it looks at,
okay,
right, to predict that next word, right? That is called context window.
Context window, okay.
Right? So like if I'm like, and it works very similar to how a human being does, right? So if I am, staying in Mumbai, right? When I say I'm going to, right? So you'll say, okay, you're more likely to go within Mumbai itself.
Mumbai, a subset of Mumbai.
Subset of Mumbai.
Yes.
Maybe you're going to Goregaon, or you're going to Chowpatty, right?
Yes.
Now let's say if I fed this a knowledge about Mumbai, right? There's a whole bunch of really good novels or stories about Mumbai, right?
So you feed that all.
You feed that all in, and that the protagonist is most of the time going to Juhu Beach.
Okay, let's say.
Right? That's for the example, right? So when I say I'm going to, it's like, oh, okay, more likely that you might be going to Juhu Beach, right?
Okay.
Unless, so I have this very high probability that you may be going to Juhu Beach, because in Bombay most of the people go to Juhu Beach,
right?
May or may not be true, right? Maybe you like more mountains, right? You may not like going to beach, right?
So once you personalize the AI, it will know more about you. Then it will be able to predict better.
Even better, right? So that's where so the transformer approach was very, very interesting, because without me telling too much about where it should start to generalize, it was able to come up with an answer.
So
right?
all you have to do is feed it more
sense,
data.
Yeah. So feed it more data.
Okay.
And train it over a period of time.
How do you train it?
So train it.
You categorize the data.
No. So basically, what you do is that you have this common crawl, right? You put it on top of all of these GPUs. So GPUs have memories.
Yes.
Right. So you make sure that they have enough memory so that they can take care of all the memory. It is required for that common crawl to be loaded onto it, right? then it makes these predictions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it makes prediction and then says, okay, no, my prediction was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I need to change this switch here.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine this massive giant brain,
Yes.
which has these massive switches inside its brain.
Okay.
Right? So every time it runs that experiment and it finds, oh, this is good. I made a good prediction.
Mm-hmm.
It goes and says, oh, this is good. Okay.
Mm.
And if it says, okay, no, this is not good, I basically flip that switch.
So are you talking about weights here?
Yeah, so I'm talking about weights here.
So what
right?
are weights? These switches,
Yeah.
these parameters that you tune.
So these weights are saying that, okay, how much importance should I give? So that I am going to, if I'm inside Mumbai to Juhu beach, right? So now Juhu is very prominent,
Yes.
right? So you will actually have a neuron which says Juhu inside that massive giant brain.
Okay.
Right? So that's how these, so when you train it, and sometimes the training can go on for 3 months, 4 months, right? It will form these connections.
Okay.
Right? So it's very similar to how a human child, like you've grown up in Mumbai.
Of course.
Right? So you have had that training every day,
Uh-huh.
right? Oh, where in Mumbai? What happens, right? Oh, you go to party, you go to Juhu Beach.
Okay.
Right?
Hmm.
If you have to go and study, then maybe you go to Hawaii.
So those
Right.
patterns and connections form inside.
Yes. So similarly, the machines, in this case, the giant brain is forming these connections.
Mm-hmm.
So it is creating its own worldview by running these experiments. And then when ChatGPT came, right, and you sort of corrected it, so it learned with what we call as reinforced learning with human feedback.
Okay.
Right. So he said, no, I don't go to Juhu Beach all the time. Right. I may be a lover of beach at one point of time, but I am now going to IIT, right? I'm working in a startup, right? So I go to IIT also, right? So like that, you give it feedback, right? And feedback also, it basically learns that, this, just like the way we teach a kid, right? That, don't do this, do this, do this.
Yes.
Right? So it's very common, right? So similar way, these giant brain gets updated with feedback.
So if you're training a giant brain for, let's say, 3 months or 6 months,
Yeah.
it's going to have billions of connections like these.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how do you
massive.
supervise that? How do you train it on billions of connections?
Yeah.
Is this what they call parameters for a model?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at, right, the new model that they came out with, they're not even revealing how many trillions of parameters it has got. Right?
Yes, trillions of parameters, and each parameter has a weight.
Each parameter has got a weight,
Right.
and it is tuned specifically, right? And it is also evolving. See, one thing that we have to understand is that, like, our world is not constant, right? Like, as
always
they say, right? Like, if you, like, as you get older, right, your worldview may not be relevant anymore, right? They say, "Yo, satya gaya hai." Like,
yeah.
In Hindi, they say, right? Like, okay, his worldview is no longer relevant, right? Because the world has changed.
Right.
So similarly, AI, once you train it, it's not the end of the training. It's the beginning of the training, right? So you trained it, given it a great jump start, right? But then you expose it to more data, more question. And that's why this kind of chatbots have evolved. It's very important for this brain to grow, right? It needs that feedback loop, right? So what we are seeing, especially with, companies like, OpenAI and others, right, is that, and that's why, Gemini jumped in, right, with Google, right, because they realize that if you don't get the feedback from people, it may not evolve well, right? So it's not that you can just keep it training endlessly. No,
So it's now being
you have
trained
to
by the
roll
users.
it out in the real world.
Okay,
right?
so now it's the users who are training it, is
Yes,
it? We are
yes.
paying so
Yeah.
that we can train it.
Train it, and then it can charge you back.
Lovely.
Right? So with internet, it got a big kickstart, right? Now it got some capabilities so that it could generalize across multiple domains, right? But to make it super relevant to what you are doing, you will start training it. That's why now ChatGPT says, I'll have this memory stored for you.
So it knows who you are. It knows things about you.
It knows things about you. In fact, one of the things that we were discussing, right? Like it's a good prompt to ask is like, tell me about something that I may not know myself. Right? In fact, I would suggest everybody to try that out.
It'll
See
be
what it
really
does.
interesting to see that, right?
Very interesting to see that because it's an insight into our own
Psyche, essentially.
psyche, self-reflection. So I think one big transformation was deep learning, right, where you got it to work. So inside the medical domain, in that medical domain, you were working, like there's another company which is working on cancer detection.
Okay.
Right. early detection of cancer. Right? So there's a company called Niramai. They detect breast cancer really early.
I see.
Right? Using thermal images.
Thermal images.
Yeah. They run AI on thermal images because unlike mammography, which you have to press the breast and it's very painful.
Okay.
Right? And you have to expose it to radiation.
I see.
They take a thermal image, which is non-invasive. Nobody touches you. Right? Now they've done more than 1 lakh now. Right?
Okay.
And they can detect breast cancer really early.
So you mean it's actually already superior to mammography?
It is superior to mammography.
Wow.
Because in the sense that it can detect early.
Okay.
Right? So before the nodes get formed, you actually have abnormal blood flow.
I see.
So they are able to see abnormal blood flow.
Based on thermal images.
Thermal images.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So it's a very interesting company. They're doing screening all over India now. Now they're going global, right? But they were only in that vertical.
Okay, very focused.
Very focused.
Okay.
They can identify cancer really well, right? But they can't be used for other things, right? But ChatGPT was a breakthrough, right? Because you could ask it any kind of multi-dimensional, right?
Right.
The next big evolution is what we're going to see. What we're calling is that we have this giant brain. Now can we put inside a human role or responsibility, right? Calling it agents.
Agents.
Right?
What's an agent?
Agentic AI.
What's that? What is that?
So agent is something which actually has an agency.
Okay.
Right? Agency means it can do things on its own.
Autonomously.
Right? Autonomously. Right? So ChatGPT was interesting, but it will only answer when I ask it.
Yes.
Right? But imagine if there is an AI which takes care of my emails when I sleep. Right? Now, if done right, it could be amazing.
Amazing. Inbox zero. Imagine that.
Zero inbox, right? I've never been able to achieve it in my life. Right? But if it doesn't align to what I think, it could be horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there was one where, I was trying out an agent which basically does meeting scheduling, all of that, right? And it did not go well.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I am almost messed up on a meeting.
Okay.
Right? And it was with Australian Consul General that I was supposed to meet, and I realized it's not on my calendar. And so it can go horribly wrong.
So we're in the early days of agentic AI.
We are in very early days of agentic AI. Agents are getting better, but we are still learning to put them into when they have their own agency of sort, right? Which direction they can go? We still don't know how to control them properly, right? And that's where the big challenge is because so far till ChatGPT, it was like a tool, right? When I need a hammer, I pick the hammer up, right? And when I am done with the hammer, I put it back.
Yes.
Right? So the hammer is only in play when I pick it up. Right?
That's right, yes.
Right? Now, if the hammer is in play all the time, right? I don't know which person is going to hit, right? Or what it's going to do,
yes.
Right? So we are going from a tool to something which has an agency of its own, which is almost like us, right? So it's a big, powerful inflection, right?
And there's something about AIs, if you give it a long, complex prompt, you'll find that it often disobeys you. It won't do what you say.
Yeah,
It'll do things differently in its own way. So this is an issue with AI.
Not only that, in fact, I would suggest you to try it out. One of my friend was actually sharing with me this because we live in this community of AI builders all the time. That ChatGPT responses deteriorate after 2:00 in the night, right? Maybe because they degrade you to a lower model or something, right? So because they think that not much traffic is going to come from India, right? So if you ask a prompt at 2:00 in the night, it may spew out some garbage.
I see.
Now imagine if it is stuck inside a role, right? And you don't really know what's happening inside that, right? And like me, you probably had an appointment to set up, right? God knows. I mean, it could have very unpredictable outcomes.
That's
right?
the danger.
That's a danger.
That's one of the dangers of AI.
Yeah. So that's when you induct anybody new in the organization, you call it intern, and then you're supposed to be under somebody who teaches you, yes, you have studied. So see, ChatGPT is almost like, we have fed the entire internet, right? So it's almost like a person who's gone through basic schooling, gone through basic college, right? But is that person ready to fit into this world? Probably not. So you have to like go through this internship,
the
training,
hand-holding
process,
yes.
right? Then you become really useful, right? So that, I think that part is where we are right now.
We are there right now.
And people thought that they could automate this part, but I don't think that is actually happening as we're thinking to be.
Okay.
So it's going to be a painful process. We probably also need to evolve its own set of guidelines and everything, because this could go horribly wrong also, right?
How can it go horribly wrong? Which ways?
I mean, one was like, okay, I'm trying to set up a meeting, and it didn't go through well.
Yeah, that can mess things up very badly.
But it could go really badly. Like, imagine if I train an agent, right, which does payments on my behalf.
Okay, now I can see where it's going.
Right?
Yeah.
Now imagine if somebody, maybe I have trained it well, and but if somebody does some injection attack or something, or messes with it, right, and that agent takes out money from my bank, but doesn't really deposit into my uncle's account where I was planning to put it, but instead deposit that money into somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's an issue.
That's an issue, right? And this is like very innocuous, right? Now it could be agents inside, medical domain, right, where the cost of error could be much higher, right? Maybe that agent didn't work out well, right? Maybe it could lead to loss of life, right?
Yes.
So loss of money is one higher area. I mean, loss of life is another dimension, right? Now imagine if these agents could be manipulated, right? So just like the way, humans, they are trained, there are good cops, there are bad cops, right?
Yes.
Now, similarly, imagine if there are cop equivalents in the agentic side, right? They're supposed to take care of things, but they get corrupted, right? So they could go rogue.
That's right.
So, and right now we're just talking about, machines that live on servers, right? Tomorrow they will be robots.
Yes, they'll have actual access to the physical world.
So what we're calling is physical AI. So post agentic AI, there is an evolution that's happening called physical AI. One of my good friends.
They actually have agents in the real world.
They have agency to do things in the physical world.
In the physical world.
Right? So one of my good friend, Pulkit Agrawal, is a professor at MIT. He runs this lab called Improbable AI Lab.
Okay.
And he's pioneering this new area of work called physical intelligence. Right?
Okay.
And they're having these robots which are, able to peel vegetables and things like that. Right? Of course, they could peel other things as well.
Yeah, if they've got a peeler in the hand, one can imagine what can possibly do if it goes wrong.
So I think it's very important to, have this transformation handled very carefully, right? But this will come, right? I think, and that's where we also need to figure out that, what's the playbook that we can evolve, right? So that we can make this transition, really careful.
I mean, we have some frameworks, some ideas, like the 3 laws of robotics, Asimov's 3 laws, but will we be able to put those guardrails into the AI is the question, because AI is a complicated thing.
Yeah, I mean, see, the more intelligence it will have, more unpredictable it will be.
Precisely.
Right? If it is super intelligent, then, it may not be predictable for us at all.
If you give it access to the physical world and it's super intelligent, I have no idea where it's going. Yeah,
and that's a real challenge, because we hardly able to understand, how the weather changes.
Yeah,
right.
It's still a challenge.
It's a challenge,
yes.
Right? So if there is a intelligence which is running this simulation, right, it is definitely of a higher order or something, right? So, imagine that that sort of seeps into all the systems that we've got, right? So far, human reliability and safety, works around the aspect, right? So like if you're driving a car, you're supposed to have a driver's license.
Yes.
Right? You're supposed to have gone through, a bunch of hours and you've passed, certain tests, then only are you allowed on the road, right? But imagine if you don't go through that, right? And if I let you loose on the road, right? You're probably not only going to injure yourself, but you're going to injure others as well. Right? Similarly, if you're supposed to cut open a human being, like in a surgery or something, right? You're also taught how to put the
back together.
Back together.
In a living state.
In a living state, right?
Yes.
And make sure that the person goes out alive.
Yes.
there was a recent case that I was reading, right, in MP or somebody, right, like the person knew how to do it, but he was not having the right license and he did not know how to put it back together.
I see.
He caused a lot of deaths, right?
Okay.
So I think the right certification, training, all of those things become even more important because these things are going to work on their own.
Yes.
Right. So that actually is a big challenge, right? So one real challenge we see is that in the current model, right? Like we all contributed to the internet, right? But you are still charged for what resulted from internet,
yes.
right? So in some case the model is kind of like a broken model, right? So there is fewer and fewer risk reward for me to put more things out on the internet.
Yeah,
right?
that's
so
the thing. Yeah.
That way, the if we continue down the same path, the internet is dead. Right? There are going to be more bots than people on the internet because there'll be no more original content. Right? So my perspective to providing more original content is not there anymore. Right? The second part, which I talked about, is the safety. Right? Like how do these things coexist within other human beings?
Before we go there, so have we reached a stage where AI has passed the Turing test?
I think in some ways we might have to evolve the Turing test.
Okay.
Because when you are chatting with ChatGPT, in fact, there are lots of. I mean, I have two daughters, right? So the elder one is 16, and she keeps telling me that there are a whole bunch of her, fellow classmates who are using it almost like a therapy. And
therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. I have these issues, these problems. Talk to me. Help me out.
Talk to me. Help me out. Right.
Okay.
And of course, it is not designed to be used as a therapist.
It's not designed that way. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have the guardrails of a therapist. Right. There are some, and that's why it may end up saying stupid things, which is like really alarming for me. Right. But to be really, it does kind of like surprise me at times with the output it gives. Right. And it's like, wow, this is interesting. This is insightful. I did not know that, right? And this is for me when I've spent almost 15, 16 years in AI field, right? So I think we are very close to that. We are very close to the traditional Turing test to be passed. And in fact, we might have to come up with a new Turing test.
A new version of the Turing.
Yeah, because once you go past the general level of intelligence, then, how do you, how do you assess, right, whether it is good enough or not? So that's another challenge. Having said that, till that intelligence is in isolation, it only works when I ask it to work.
Then it's safe.
Then it is, safe in the relative terms. It can still tell you that, push that red button.
I know. Push the red button.
Right.
Launch the nukes.
I don't know. I hope not.
Yeah.
But still it is telling you, so you could still have the human in the loop.
So we still get to decide what to do. We are given recommendations, suggestions, but we still get to decide. Now, what is AGI and what's ASI?
Yeah, ASI is whole new ball game. Of course, people are talking about that we are going to get to ASI.
Artificial superintelligence.
Artificial superintelligence, which is like a higher level of intelligence than us, right? And of course, Ilya is now working on safe superintelligence.
Okay.
I don't know what that word means because
safe superintelligence.
Yeah, because if superintelligence, it's unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
Whether it is safe for humanity or not, I don't know.
It's like us talking to a dog. We are the superintelligence. The dog is the thing, right? So now we're going to have something like that.
So there will be a
AI with
order
IQ 300,
right? So you have another species which is probably a lot more intelligent than us.
Yes.
In some ways, there are definitely more intelligence in the world than we do.
I'm sure it's possible.
Whatever is running the weather simulation, whatever, is a higher level of intelligence, right? Because we don't understand it fully, right? But yes, it's going to be even more unpredictable.
So are we going in that direction towards ASI?
I think we probably, and this is my own, humble submission that I may not know much also, but my sense is that we might have to solve, quantum compute before we can credibly go there.
Okay, quantum computing.
People are thinking that they cluster up enough GPUs together, we may reach there. it's harder because even that has limits. In fact,
that has limits.
Grok, when they were trying to train, right, their first training run failed because of cosmic rays.
Okay, cosmic rays.
There was like whole joke going around that God doesn't like Elon Musk, right?
But cosmic rays to disrupt the thing.
But that's a challenge, right? Because when you go into that kind of compute cluster, right, where you've got 100,000 machines which are tripping the electricity up and down, right? And you have massive energy concentration, right? And at that level of energy concentration, cosmic rays start to play a part, right? It goes into this quantum physics. And, so when you're trying to replicate training data from one GPU to another, it could get corrupted.
You get errors.
Right? You get errors, right? So maybe there could be physical limit to what we can achieve with this kind of compute.
So maybe we need to go to quantum computing where you have
maybe we need to
superpositions
go to neuromorphic computing. Maybe we need to evolve to quantum compute before we can lay our claim to ASI.
So ASI still is in the future, but are we already reaching AGI?
I think we are somewhere close to it in sense that we can get human kind of responses, but it's very one-dimensional, right? So yes, text, it is working well.
Yes.
But in the multimodal intelligence, there's human intelligence is so far underrated. But like 90% of the jobs don't really require that level of
real
intelligence.
Human intelligence, right?
But we are very perceptive, right? We are very social. So intelligence has many facets, right? So when we are talking about AGI, we're talking about probably in one facet right now, right? But we gather together, we are socially intelligent, right? We know how to read the room, right? Does AI know how to read the room?
Not quite.
Probably not right now, right? Maybe it will.
It will, maybe. Yeah.
Right? But then there is something called as embodied intelligence, right? That and especially when you try to do yoga, you meditation, you realize that there is something intelligent. I mean, it's not that this is the brain that's working, right? There's the whole of your body, your muscles, everything, right? It's alive, right? It's giving feedback loops. I mean, the neurons are not only in your brain, but in your gut, everywhere. All over, right?
Yes.
So it's a fascinating piece of computing, as I call it, right? And we are nowhere close to that, right? We're trying to create a new kind of intelligence, right? Learning from the human intelligence, right? As much as we can. And maybe for next level of ASI, we need to go more deep within us. Maybe we need to understand because, there's a big leap from intelligence to consciousness, right? And of course, in English, those consciousness doesn't really has the right parallel, I would say, to what we call as dhyanam. And, I think that dhyanam is a lot more deeper, right? So the common perspective is that intelligence plus can reach consciousness, right? And that sort of alludes to ASI, right? Feel the AGI kind of a thing. But it's a step jump. I mean, that's what so far my experience as trying to meditate and learn about how do you glimpse it, or how do you feel different, right? When you go still for a long period of time. So my sense is that is quite different. I mean, I can't describe it, but my sense is that we are still far away from that.
Okay.
Level of consciousness, right? So we may be building AI consciousness, but it's in a different plane, right? That plane is very different. So my sense is that it's still a lot to go. Maybe another 15, 20, 30 years.
Because we are embodied consciousnesses, but this thing is a disembodied intelligence. I'm sure it's not aware of the physical confines in which it resides, right?
Yeah, it's different. So my sense is that while in some ways it's also like ASI shouldn't be really anchored on human intelligence, because maybe it is different.
It is
truly different, right? Maybe study of human intelligence may not be the best way to reach ASI. Maybe we need to study other kind of intelligence,
perhaps.
Right? Maybe we need to study how trees are intelligent, or maybe we need to study how other things are intelligent.
Octopuses, perhaps.
I don't know. Maybe.
So why do nations consider AI to be a national security issue?
Because the challenge is that on two fronts. One is that since you're talking about national security, and we just
went through the 3-day war.
Yeah, 3-day conflict. I hope it was not war. It was a lot more precise. But yes, I think the real challenge is that now you can actually have, you can put all the domains together, right? And you can sort of predict, right, what's the next plague is going to be, right? Not only that, you can also learn how to inflict the maximum surprise, and you could do it at scale. See, the human intelligence is very interesting, right? It's very deep, right? It's probably has a massive potential, but it is super hard to put it together, right? Like you and I may not agree on many things, right? So I may support you when you do something.
Issue-based support,
right? Like, you may be supporting Mumbai Indians and I may be supporting RCB, right? So I may not like see eye to eye with you when I'm on a cricket
on
field
that front.
Not, right? But, it's easy for me to stack, the AI up and scale it, right? So I could feed a lot of data and it could make sense, right? Whereas I could get overwhelmed with a lot of data, right? That's what happens with a lot of people, right? Like we get overwhelmed with a lot of data, right? Not like we need some time to process. Right?
It takes time to process.
Like a lot of time when you go through breakup, other things, right? It takes years to process that, right? Like why did that happen? Why did they say so? All those things, right?
Right.
So in some sense, if I see like human intelligence is multidimensional, right? But at the same time, it's hard to get people to swarm together, right? Think in one direction,
right?
But with AI, it's very different, right? I can get it to think that, I have to attack this nation.
And that's the only thing it will focus on.
It will only think
all its resources will go in that.
Yeah. So that, in some sense, the plus and minus are both in the there, right? So you can scale your biases, right? So if I'm a dictator and I'm like, okay, I have some personal validation through more fame or other thing or infamy, right? I could say I don't care, right? So much of intelligence, we've been, older traditions talking about it, right? Can also be dangerous if it is not balanced with responsibility.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think there is a real danger as we start to progress beyond or closer to AGI towards ASI. How do we govern that journey, right? Whether it's in terms of making sure that our existing societal norms hold, whether nation states hold, right? I mean, humans believe in this abstract notion of nation, right? Machines don't, right?
Right, they don't.
I don't care where
so
they belong.
How could AI disrupt this nation state system that we currently have?
I mean, so if you imagine, right, today, the dogs around me or cats around me had no decision-making power in whether we fight with Pakistan or not.
They have no say.
They have no say.
Yes.
Right?
They're
so
Indian dogs and cats, but they don't have any say.
Yeah, they have no say, right?
Yeah.
I may love them, but they have no say, right? So, but imagine if the same thing holds true for us as well, right?
Like we become the equivalent of today's dogs and cats compared to the intelligence level of ASI.
Yeah. So we may not have say in how this planet is run. Maybe it will decide for the good. Right?
Maybe from its perspective, it's for the good.
It's for the good. Maybe in that grand scheme of things, we may not exist at all. We may not matter.
Yes.
So it's highly disturbing for egocentric perspective that we have as a human species.
We imagine that we are the center of the universe.
We are the center of the universe, right? So for us, it's quite unsettling.
Yes.
Right? So yes. So how do we handle this transition? Not just from the societal security perspective, but also from nation and national security perspective, even from a personal transition perspective, right? Like, see, today we derive so much of meaning, joy, and structure from the work we do.
Yes.
Right? Although it may not use all our creativity all the time, right? But we derive economic output from it,
and we feel like we're contributing some value to society by putting in the work.
Right?
Yes.
Now, if all of that gets automated, how do we find ourselves in this new scenario?
Yes.
Right? Whether we would be like animals in the zoo, right? Paid to posture or whatever. right? I mean, you get fed at the right time and like
you're taken care of.
UBI, universal basic income.
Universal basic income, right? So you don't have to work now.
You don't have to work now. You can watch YouTube videos all day long.
Scroll all day.
Yeah. So do we become a scroller human of sort?
So is that the direction that we could perhaps go towards?
I think it's fairly likely that we could go towards that unless we handle this transition really well.
Okay, so how do we handle the transition? What's your proposal?
I don't know whether we have a proposal as of yet now, but I think one of the things that we have to go back, and look at like where do we come from, right? How we've been rooted, right? So there are two aspects which are very interesting, and maybe that could provide us the clue as to how do we build a different playbook, right? Not the scroller human playbook or not the semi-auto human playbook, right? Of China and US. Right? Maybe there is a new playbook out there that we could actually explore, right? Maybe that is anchored on exploration of human potential, right?
Okay.
Using the knowledge of and the intelligence and the behavior of human being to seed the next evolution, right? And maybe that's where, we have to think from two perspectives, right? Like we have the largest number of human brains in the world right now.
As in India?
India.
Yes.
Yeah. Whether they're well fed, not fed is totally different thing.
But we have the numbers.
But we have the numbers.
Yes.
Right? The second part is that, so in that sense, we are literally the cradle of humanity.
We have historically been that actually.
We have been
We know that, yeah.
Right? We have the diversity.
We have the most diversity of any culture, nation in the world.
We were discussing that, right? Like, Silicon Valley says that they are diverse, but you come to Kumbh Mela and you have Naga Sadhu next to a person bathing in full clothing, and you see the diversity, not just in the way they dress or live, but in the entire traditions that they follow, right? So you see the full spectrum of diversity and how it is accepted.
Yes.
Right? There are 4, 5, 6 different religions being born, right?
From right here. Yeah.
And they are all living together, right? Sustainably.
Yeah, together. Right? It's a whole system.
It's a whole system. And it is super difficult to even think about. Like US is a nation that has existed for how many years?
250 years.
250 years.
Roughly.
Right?
Give or take.
Yeah, I mean, China, of course, has been there for much longer.
They have been around for 3,500 years, perhaps.
Yeah.
So they're similar to us.
They're similar to us, but they killed so many people in 65, right? The whole cultural revolution.
Cultural revolution and great leap forward and Mao Zedong,
So they have, in some sense, discounted a lot of the traditional value systems.
Oh, they tried to wipe everything out, and now they are rediscovering it because they realize it's of some value to them.
It's some value because, see, these systems have evolved through series of experiments, right? When we train AI, we realize that, it goes through these series of experiments. It keeps what is useful, it discards what is not useful.
Yes.
Right? So if I look at a culture, right? What is culture? Culture is a series of sustainable experiments, right? What are you eating today? You're eating a thali, right? What is thali? Thali is made up of regional dishes, whatever is found nearby you. It is consisting of things which are growing in that season, right? Which is consisting of things that you can eat every day, right? So that thali never had paneer in it, right? But it had dal, it had everything, right? And people have survived over a period of time. So that this is okay, this works, right?
Yeah.
So it has gone through these series of experiments to evolve to that state.
Yeah, right? Over thousands of years.
Or thousands of
years.
In
our case.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I look at it in data terms, right? We've gone through trillions and trillions of thought experiments, physical experiments, to come to where we are.
So these traditions are actually very valuable then.
It's very valuable, right? Yeah. So like, there are these things, and we studied that, like in terms of the languages, right? So just, I don't have uncles, right? Okay. I have mama, I have chacha, I have tau.
Yeah.
Like, look at the rich diversity of relationships. And each of that signifies that I treat my tau differently how I treat my mama.
But in English, it's all uncle,
it's all uncle, right? So in some ways, if the only knowledge base is English, it wipes away all this nuance.
Language is so important. And our languages are so rich, so much nuance.
There's so much diversity. I mean, when we studied these languages and we were trying to digitize them in the districts of Karnataka, this Project Vani, we realized that it changes. So Kannada is not the same that is spoken in Bangalore, versus what is spoken in North Karnataka. It's different. Like Marathi is different, right? Mumbai Marathi is different than you go to Baramati Taluka or you go somewhere else, right? It's very different. Why? Because it evolved. There is certain kind of vegetation or a food that is only found there, right? So when you wipe away that language, that all of that culture, knowledge, everything is gone.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's a huge loss.
It's a huge
humanity.
Loss. Right.
Yes.
And then you will say, okay, I will use that ChatGPT to describe. Oh, it may not be able to describe.
It won't be able to describe in the depth and nuance that you need, actually.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think the important perspective of India is not just these massive number of brains, but these brains are fed on very diverse data, right? Every day, although our schools have done a really bad job in trying to uniform them, but because substantial time is still spent away from the schools in the real world, right? Which are so it's massive unsupervised learning at scale,
super huge scale,
right?
Very large scale.
So if we are able to create a system which can take in the knowledge that these human brains are capturing and use it to seed the evolution of agentic AI and eventually the physical AI, then we may actually have a different trajectory altogether, right? And we have the largest number of developers, right?
We do, yeah.
Right? So if we can evolve a system which can be followed, for us as an example, can be picked up early by the developer ecosystem here, right? And can become a template, right? So then we actually have a real chance at evolving not through scroller human or semi-auto human, but maybe a sustainable man-machine society where autonomous human beings can live together with autonomous machines, and each one can explore and discover their fullest potential, right? Of course, right now it sounds like science fiction, and it's a very wild dream.
That was the next question. How do we make this happen in India?
So I think the key, so we have to work with our strengths, right? So if you look at India, we are the only country in the world which have digitized 1.4 billion people's identity through Aadhaar.
That's a huge data stack that we have.
In fact, I remember I was in the room when Nandan talked about his vision for Aadhaar.
Okay.
This was in 2008. I remember there was a cyber society meeting in Bangalore, right? And we were like wild-eyed and we went into that meeting. It was like hardly 14, 15 people. We were there, fortunately. And a month back, I had watched Minority Report. You had this biometric scanning, and he was talking about biometric scanning for, billion plus people at that time. And I was like, no way, that's going to happen. Right?
And here we are today.
Yeah. My mom, right? She's able to use the same biometric system to get her pension, right? She's able to, give proof to the government that she's alive, right? Otherwise, it was a massively torturous process.
Yes, it
right?
was.
I mean, for me to get a new SIM card, it used to a big challenge. Right now, I submit my biometric, and I'm done.
That's it,
right?
done.
So I think we have done that investment, right? Really ahead of the curve. Nobody in the world has done it.
Yes.
Right. That means that each of those brains have a digital signature of sort.
Yeah.
Right. Unique way to identify, which data is coming from which brain.
Yeah. So we already have that.
We already have that.
Yes.
So that's a massive advantage. Nobody else in the world has got it. Right. Of course, OpenAI was trying to create this orb and other things, right, to scan iris and all, but doing it at scale is going to be not easy task. We have already done that.
We've done that.
Right? We've done the hard yard, right? So what if we take that as a base, as a foundational base, right? And we say, okay, everybody who's got an Aadhaar, right? We give you a universal basic intelligence of sort.
Okay.
Right? So we have agent, which is trained, gone through 12th, K-12, right? Which has gone through a college, right? Which has this basic knowledge. We give it to you, right? Now you train it. So just like the way you train your kids, right? In South India, they even add the parent's name to the kid's name, right? So it's a very long tradition. And maybe, we have gotras and all of those things, right?
Yes.
Where do you come from, right? So you can, of course, it has been misused in the way caste got worded over a period of time, right? It was a simple way to,
it's been distorted. The whole system has been distorted by
right?
the.
Of course, it will always be distorted further as well, right? But if you see the knowledge that you might have acquired, right, Now, if you're able to use your digital identity, right, uniquely seed this universal basic intelligence that you've got into something that can complement you, that can take your thinking forward, right? It could be a massive, massive change vector, right? It could be safer, right? Because, you can always initial training time, just like the way it happens with kids, right? I don't give them the car keys when they're 12 or 13. Right?
That's right, yeah.
They have to go through, the training and everything. And only at 18, you get to independently drive it after you got a driving license.
Right.
So imagine if I able to train the agent till it, I'm able to contribute, I'm able to nudge it. No, don't do this, do this, right? And in some ways, it is also able to economically reward me, right? So, when it is working on behalf of me, the economic attribution comes back to me, right? So what happens is that, one, I have incentive to train it further, right? Second, if it does anything nefarious, because I'm in the loop, I have to take the hit. So it's a risk-reward model. Just like the way, like if you, of course, when your son does, or, till age of 18, right?
It's on you.
It's on you, right? So, of course, they are put out, in juvenile and other places, right? But you get the hit, right? The society says that you did bad, right? Because it's your kid, right?
It's your responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, after 18, it can be, free to act on its own, right? So maybe for next 18 years, we just train these agents, right? So imagine these agents, when they get trained, right, in the way you think, right, seated in the way you think, how the society functions, right? You have incentive to train them further, right? And so in the short burst of time, it actually allows us to have a big leap in the GDP growth, right? So imagine we're able to train it, right? So you are able to do 1.5 times what you're able to do now, right? So you're able to record only one podcast in a day because you have to take care of making sure that everything is, packaged together, scripts are put, all the headlines are right, everything, right? You have to take care of so many things, right? This is one podcast. Basically, in the background, you have to do so many things.
This is the easy part of the podcast.
This is the easy part.
The real work happens later, which no one says.
No one says, right? Yeah. The unsexy part, right? So that typically is like, you have this iceberg theory, right? So you only see a part of it.
That's right.
The massive part is hidden,
yeah,
right? So the grunt work, everything, right? So you are able to power through that grunt work so that you can really focus on the creative side where you can bring your insights in, right? And train it further, right? So this model of seeding agentic AI with human identity, intelligence, and behavior, right, allow us to have safer transition, right? Allow us to have data attribution, right? And in future, it could go inside a physical robot, right?
The future.
And do things, right? But when it is doing things, it is already aligned, right, to the society that you live in, right? It knows the laws, right? It has been trained well, it is aligned well. And maybe if it progresses through that till we hit ASI, I don't know when we will do that, right? But this transition is going to be a lot more safer, less disruptive.
So let's say we give each Indian an instance of these things.
Yeah.
Is each Indian ready to take care of this? I mean, do Indians know how to train AI? Do we need to educate them first?
Absolutely. So I think if I see, and I know that when people talk about AI disruption and they see, the jobs will go away, right? There is also a big opportunity, given that, we are the largest number of human brains in the world. Right?
Yes.
We're going to have 900 million people in the demographic potential, right? Demographic potential means that we're going to have people in the age group of 15 to 64.
That's right.
Right? Now, that means that a large number of our population is very young, right? So if they are taught well, they can learn new things really well, right? So imagine if we give these early agents. These early agents are primed to do two things. One, to be useful, and in turn teach people how to work with them, right? So learning to learn, we were chatting about it a bit earlier, right?
Yes,
so
learning to learn.
That what if we are able to train everyone on how to learn?
Yes.
Right? At a massive scale, right? So it's not just basic literacy or mathematics or the English or Hindi or writing that we are talking about, but we are in some sense talking about AI literacy at scale, right? Now, if we can get that, right? Because see, even though people are talking about ASI, I think still it's quite some time away, right? So if you see when Industrial Revolution happened, right? For almost 170 to 2000 years, world went through this massive tear in terms of industrializing everything.
Yes.
From agriculture to industrializing trade to retail, everything.
Yes.
Right? It took that much time, right? And in that time, of course, the number of people who were doing agriculture declined, right? But then the other jobs came up.
They did.
Right? And those jobs were like 4x times or four times the number of jobs. So people were always perennially short of people, right? Now my sense is that next 30 years, we're going to go through 4 waves of digitization.
4 waves.
Yeah. Now, the 4 waves of digitization, the early part is visible in places like, IT and media, because things are already digitized, right? So everything is literally now there are no analog TV left in India, right? So it's fairly digitized. So both consumption as well as creation has gotten digitized, right? In fact, I was trying to look for a film camera just to buy and archive it, right? And I wasn't able to find.
Okay, it's no longer available.
It's no longer available, right? So I know that the creation as well as consumption has gone completely digital, right? So that's why there is so much of flurry that, creative job is going away, this is going away, that is going away. But it's in very few areas, right? If I talk about construction, if I talk about agriculture, if I talk about government, all of these sectors, they're not digitized at all.
They're not.
Right? So first they have to go through digitization.
So that's the first wave.
First wave. The second wave, so they have to convert the data from analog format to digital format.
Right.
Not just the data digitization, but also they have to create the creation of data also. So the future data also should be
from ab initio.
Ab initio should be the digital native form.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So that those systems have yet to be built in.
Right.
Right. Then the second one is that you take the data, collate it together, right? So, and then you mark it, saying that this data is important, this data is not important. This says this is dog, this is cat, right?
Right.
So you have to, because you have a lot of domain knowledge, right? So that domain knowledge has to then classify the data that yes, because before AI could understand that, it has to be classified. So your knowledge has to go into that data.
Right.
So it's no longer data, but information. So data turns into information when you have domain.
Classified.
Yeah, you classify that, right? Then the third level is that you have data, then you have to build a supply chain.
Okay.
Right? So AI has its own full supply chain, right? So the data creation, curation, assimilation, then you have training data. See, imagine every night when we go to sleep, world changes.
Yes.
Right? So whatever we have seen in the past, we literally recompile it in our dreams. Okay. You update all our models in our dreams. That's why REM sleep is very important. People are discovering that. So if you're sleeping, to everyone, make sure that you sleep well. And if you're having dreams, it's super important. So there are ways, markers now you can track your REM sleep. So if your REM sleep starts to go down, your chances of getting neurodegenerative diseases in the older times go up.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So very interesting. Now we are discovering the correlation connections and all of those things. But so the dream is very important, right? So the simulator that runs on our blood. So every night we are retraining ourselves.
Okay.
Right? So imagine that even if we build AI, we have to train it, update it with what has happened in the world every night, right? So that supply chain will coexist, right? All the time.
Okay.
Right? Then the fourth one is that, yes, you have these things. Now, how do I make use of that? Right? So all these 4 waves of digitization, we're going to go through in 15 to 30 years. And that's a time when we have 900 million human brains. So if we are able to train ourselves, right, in learning to learn, right, and create these AI agents which are primed for learning, right, with a higher outcome. Instead of 900 million people, we might have 2 billion in total. 900 million people plus whole bunch of agents, right? So your GDP, we could literally leapfrog more than 30 trillion by 2047.
Right, using AI. Leveraging AI.
Leveraging AI. So I think, but for that, it's important that we create AI which is seeded with human identity, intelligence, and behavior, so that it can coexist with the rest of the society.
Okay, yes.
Right? It doesn't cause disruption. It has an economic engine. It has a data economy which rewards creators. I mean, today, if you see in UK, all the artists, right, they are struggling. They're actually, campaigning outside, UK government.
I see.
Right? Because, all the AI companies are saying that, give us the data, right? It's because we need it for training, right? But that artist who struggled to become an artist, right? He's not getting anything out of that.
Right.
But imagine in this kind of a scenario where you get to create your own digital twin or AI twin, right? And you have, risk because, Abhijit agent can do many things, right? But you also have reward, right? So you have risk, so you take responsibility for that risk, saying that I will make sure that Abhijit agent does things ethically, right way, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I have the reward, right? That if it does, then maybe you can produce more podcasts. Maybe you can reach out to more number of people, right? And you are in charge, right? So you know how to train it and leave a legacy, right? So in some ways, we have to think about AI from that perspective, right? And so this model, I feel, probably is the right model. The human, I call it humanity-centric model.
Humanity-centric model.
Right? So maybe the Bharat model of AI needs to be the humanity-centric model of AI.
Right. So how do we actually proceed and implement this?
That's a great, because I feel that there are two things which are important. One is that your agent or agent that acts on your behalf, I think it has to be some kind of a digital public intelligence of sort, right? So that means that fiduciary agent or agent that works on your behalf should not be guided by the economic incentives, right? So even if today ChatGPT gives me an agent, that says, okay, train it for you.
Right.
I will forever be suspecting, that it may try to monetize of me, which has been the case.
Yes.
Like if I look at the playbook of Facebook, why Facebook is trying to, create, they're now trying to, create AI agents, which will be friends, right? But those friends will interact with you, get all of your data,
yes.
right? So maybe there is an economic model for them, right? And maybe it's good for them, right?
Yes.
But it may not be great for the overall society, right? Because aim of society should not be influenced by aim of a private company.
Exactly. It's gaming you actually.
In some ways, right? Maybe that's how that model works. But I think for India, if we can create a model where we have a framework, right? So just like UPI and other things, we came up with a framework, right? That framework is implemented, right? There could be many companies that could come up with the solutions for that, but they are acting within that framework, right? The data remains on your side with you, right? It remains on your devices, right? So your personal data remains on your devices. You have full control over that. Tomorrow, if you change device, right? The challenge is that if Apple comes up with their own, but if you change the phone, you cannot do that, right? So all of that intelligence will remain in Apple intelligence, right? That's how their economic model works.
Right.
But I think if I look at from the societal perspective, the fiduciary agent should remain with people, right? So it should be something that you are holding, right? And it should act on your best interest, right? It should be privacy preserving, right? Nobody apart from you should know about it,
right?
Including the government.
Including the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very important because today maybe the right set of people are in charge in government, right?
Tomorrow it may have a different set of people,
right?
Yeah.
So my sense is that's why I'm saying that it should be humanity centric first, right? So I recognize that yes, you have a perspective, right, which is very uniquely yours, right, and you have a right to grow it, right? So you sort of nurture and grow your personal agent, right, with resources maybe that can be given by the society, paid for the society, right? So just like the way today you have the choice to take your kids to maybe government school, right? Now you might say that, okay, after 3rd or 4th standard, I may want to shift him to a private school, That's your choice.
Yes.
Right? But everybody has access.
Right.
So in some ways, instead of creating a few AI overlords, we are creating a lot more equal society. Right? Everybody has access to. Earlier, everybody needed to have access to education. We are saying everybody has access to intelligence, basic intelligence.
Okay, universal basic intelligence.
Yeah. And while that can be paid for by the state, you of course can devote more resources.
Right.
See, nobody stops you for investing in you. Yes, you went through the same school, right? You went through the same college, right? But after that, what did you do? You invested in yourself, right? You learned so many new things, right? So that's up to you. That's your initiative, right? But everybody gets a head start.
Yes, right? The same starting point, everybody.
Same starting point, and then of course you grow.
It's up to you.
Yeah. So you may want to say, okay, no, I want my agent to, watch all the movies, predict movies for me, do other things. Great.
Your choice.
It's your choice, right? But everybody has that, right? It should not be that.
What happens when a person passes away? What happens to the agent?
That's a great point. I mean, we're still debating on that, right? But my sense is that you could pass it on to your, legal hair or whatever, right? You could say that, no, I will donate my, I will donate my intelligence. So one case it can go back to society, or it could be, passed on to your kids or whoever it is there, right? So there could be ways in which you can, but it's a great question actually.
Does it become a legal entity? I mean, like a human being, kind of.
So I think at some point of time,
it will.
Once it has enough capability to act completely on its own.
Yes.
Right, and we have made sure that if it's working as a robot taxi, then it knows all the laws, it's compliant, and it is not getting into anybody's wrong side or whatever, right? Maybe that is a good time when it could be independent, right? But you could still get economic incentive for training it,
right? Yes,
and making sure that the training is updated, right? So in some sense, that AI may work for you at some point of time together with you. I mean, who knows after that? But what we would have ensured is that it is seeded in with the human identity, intelligence, and behavior, right? So it is always going to have the best interest of humanity in mind at some level, right? Because it will understand us better.
Right.
Right? Where do we come from, right? Where we want to go, right? At the same time, this next 20 to 30 years of period, right, which can allow us to create more economic wealth for our own country, right? That could actually allow us to, devote more resources, right, in this area. The second part that could be super interesting, because if we have a template that's working, right, an alternate model. See, right now, world doesn't have an alternate model. Either it's scroller human or it is semi-auto human, right? If it has a model where both can coexist in a safe way, where there is data attribution, that knowledge passes from human to machines, and machines in turn teach humans. So it's a kind of like a synergistic equilibrium.
Right.
Just like the way UPI has been adopted in other countries now. I mean, the whole model is with MOSIP. It's going global. Maybe this could be the model that could get adopted by other countries, right? Maybe it will, create more space for humanity, not just within India, right? And maybe an alternate model, people will realize that, yeah, even in Silicon Valley, maybe this is the right model, right? So right now I see that we don't have a choice, right? But maybe through this path, maybe we can create a new model, right? And it will become even more important when we will progress to physical AI, right? When you will do physical things, right? So if you have this seeded to create agentic AI, right, which does limited things, which are more in digital domain, eventually it will do things which are in physical domain, right? People are talking about universal basic robot by 2040 or so.
Okay.
Right? So maybe you have some days you may not want to go to factory or, do other things.
Let the robot go.
Let the robot go. Let it represent you.
Right.
Now, of course, right now it sounds like very science fiction.
Yeah.
But maybe, that day may come, right? Or maybe that robot might take care, of your elderly parents, right? Now, elderly parents may like the personal touch that you could bring through that robot, right? Maybe you're not in a physical shape. Like, I mean, I have some friends which are now, getting on the wrong side of 50, right? Now they have parents getting old, right? Now the parents don't want, external help to come and help them because they don't really understand them really well, right? Or they don't understand the culture or whatever, right? But imagine if they had a robot to come and help them, which also understood where they're coming from, right? So that level of perspective is very unique, right? So maybe this could provide a very alternate template. At the same time, during this point of transition, it will create an economic feedback loop, right? So imagine if you're a farmer, right? You grow a physical twin on farming, right? When you're sleeping, there is daytime in US, right? Now imagine you're tending the fields in India during the night, but you've trained in, farmer agent of yourself, right? Which can grow rice in US, right? And economically profit from there, right? Now, how would that happen? We actually ran some experiment in ARTPARK also. Like you can remotely control things, right? So, so a lot of those operations will get mechanized and, but you might still need to take judgment or human judgment.
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop, right? For safety reasons, right? You may be driving. So imagine a person sitting in a village in North Karnataka driving a robot taxi in New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will happen.
It will happen, right?
Yeah.
Imagine, that's an agent that has been trained on the roads of India, right? It knows that people can come from, there are one ways in Bangalore.
It will work anywhere
everywhere,
in the world.
right? Yeah. So you imagine that kind of economy, right? Where you have human in the loop, where you have machines with human in the loop, right? And you are creating economic output, right? Which is making the world better, right? At the same time, enriching the country as well, right? So it could be a very different kind of economic model. I think our economists are still, most of the economists are actually quite away from technology, but if you see the disruptive shift that we are seeing coming, maybe this could be the right path. It could allow, world to, get help. Like if you look at Japan, right? They've closed their primary schools, right? Their population is rapidly aging, right? The biggest challenge that they're trying to fight is loneliness, right?
Yes.
Now imagine if there is a person from the northern part of Kerala, right? That person can direct a robot, or his agent can go and be the seed for a robot which can take care of elderly people in Japan, right?
Right.
So maybe because coming from if you're coming from Kottayam district, or the seva bhav is in their blood, right? So they really know how to. That's why the nurses from Kerala, they're so famous.
I see.
I was talking to a friend in US, and it was like he makes sure that when he goes to the hospital that the nurse taking care of him is and he's not Indian.
Okay.
Right. From Kerala, because they're the best.
I see.
Right. So very interesting. So maybe these things which are constrained, like today, if I see for a person in rural India to increase his economic output, right, he has to migrate. And that's how China grew. China grew by migrating whole bunch of people from rural China to Industrial China.
Yes.
Right. What happened was that they practically left whole bunch of kids to raise themselves. Right? Which, I don't know what the consequences of that would be, but maybe we don't need to go down that path, right? Maybe we need to take work to the rural India, not just from, the cities, but from across the globe.
Across the globe.
Right? So if we can, create this kind of a model, give everybody a universal basic intelligence of sort,
right?
Create connectivity, right? With 5G and 6G, you beam down the internet from everywhere, right? You could actually have very credibly farmers taking care of, farms in Australia, in Europe, in US. Don't need to migrate. Today, right? Like a lot of farms in Italy are run by, people who have gone from Punjab, right?
Yeah. But physically there. Yes. Right.
So while that has really nourished that country, right? You get the mozzarella cheese in your pizza. But
Punjabi mozzarella,
right? But that has actually hollowed Punjab out. Right? There's a lot of socio-economic challenges in Punjab because of the fact that the best brains have gone outside.
They're all leaving.
Yes. Right? So maybe this could be the new model of development. Where
don't leave. You do it from here.
So instead of these big, huge, smart cities, you have these smart clusters, smart villages.
Yeah, we need to have smart villages. We need to decentralize everything.
We need to decentralize everything.
Yes.
And that will actually make that people are living happier.
Imagine the prosperity that spreads through the country once you do this.
Once you do that, right? And not just prosperity in the economic sense, but in the true well-being sense, right? Like as it was envisioned in the olden times, right? Like that you're happy, you're able to spend time with your near and dear ones, right? At the same time, yes, you're able to. So they say, right, like the 4 pillars, right? All the 4 pillars have to be, embodied in some way, right? So maybe it will be a more well-rounded, sustainable development. So I feel that that's a model that we should actually, work towards and adopt. Maybe the Bharat model of AI has to be humanity-centric.
So how far are we away from having the Bharat model of AI? How far are we away from having a universal basic intelligence for everybody?
I think the opportunity is right now.
Okay.
Right? I feel that next, if I look at it, right, 6 to 18 months are going to be critical.
6 to 18 months?
Yeah.
I mean, right here, right now?
Right here, right now.
How so? Please explain.
Yeah. Because once you actually have agents coming in, right, which are maybe if they're only coming from template from Valley or China, right? Like Valley is going to have agents through whether it's Google, Facebook, all of them are actually, I mean, the reason why they're spending so much money is because they see that the current economic model that they have based on internet marketing, it's all going to die down.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. They feel that the way you can mine the intent is where the agents will come in, right? So let's say if I have to, after this podcast, I have to, go back to the hotel or wherever Airbnb where I'm staying. I need an Uber, right? So I'll basically have to pay to the Google agent, which is going to arrange an Uber for me, right? So I pay him 8 rupees, 9 rupees or whatever. Instead of some paisa that they get right now because they do the marketing or they run ads.
Right, yes.
So it's a big change that, is happening today or planned to happen in next 8 to 18 months. These models are going to be very capable model, right? Or, DeepSeek R2 is supposed to drop in, right? From China
R2.
side, right? And they are also working on, a few agents as well, right? So either we get flooded with agents from US or China, right? So we have this window of opportunity next 8 to 18 months, and we all have to work together, right? So we need to get the, all the startups, innovators, people who are funding them, venture capitalists, government, so that they make the right policy, which is good for us in the long term. We have to of us to actually come together and align, right, to make that change happen. It's not going to be easy, but I feel that given that imagine we went from all cash to UPI.
Yes.
I mean, today we are the largest.
We are.
Right? So it's possible. We have as I said, right, we have already done the investment in human identity, right? So we don't have to walk that path. For anybody, any other nation to, follow that, they have to go through the same investments, right? Some way or the other. Third, if we can make this data economy for creator the richest in the world, right? That if you come to India, and if you're a creator, right, your data will be respected. You will be given, we may have artists migrating from all across the world, right? So this could become the magnet for people to come to India, right? And say, okay, I will, they used to say, right, I'll take my trade there. Right?
Yes.
So if I'm respecting human identity, human intelligence, right, the most, then we could become the next Silicon Valley for the world.
If we create the right conditions to attract the right people.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think we have to do now. We don't have a choice. 6 to 18 months. Because once the standards get, is it possible for you to create a different standard for internet? No. It's not.
It's done. It's baked in.
It's baked in.
Yes.
Right? So before it becomes baked in, we have to do this.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's where the action window is now.
So what's the government of India doing vis-a-vis AI? There's this AI initiative or AI.
Yeah.
So what's happening in there?
So India AI mission is amazing. I think one thing which was a big challenge in India was compute shortage.
Biggest challenge.
Yeah. So I think they've unlocked that.
Okay.
I think the unique model that they've come up with is amazing because it is creating capacity at the same time. It is incentivizing private players to come up in this area.
Okay.
Right. So Yota and others have come up now. Otherwise, it was super difficult. So if you ask me, the whole bunch of my startups, they actually had moved their training infrastructure to Valley.
Okay.
Because there were no GPUs that at scale. Because if I look at the economic cost of creating a model, right? Almost 80 to 90% cost was in training the model.
Okay.
Right. Now, if wherever training is cheapest, people will move there. Now, with $1 per hour with the subsidy that Indian government is giving, it's the cheapest now in India.
Okay.
So now people are training models in India.
All right.
Right. So this is amazing. Right. So that flip has happened. So one is compute. The second one is the data. Right. So if we create a fair framework for data attribution in form of this, what we're calling as the humanity-centric AI, right? We have DEPA, DPDP, the personal, the whole techno-legal regulations, they're already in place for preserving the data, especially if you've contributed to it, right? So the frameworks are there now, right? The third thing that I feel could be super, super interesting is that if we can get large amount of capital behind it, right? So along with India AI mission, of course, that has some capital allocation as well. But I feel that it may be a little small. We need to create a large capital pool, like $5 to $10 billion risk capital pool behind these experiments.
Okay.
Right? Because if you have to create, so here's the maths, right? If we can create, let's say, a fund of fund from Government of India, right? And we basically say it's going to be used for AI and deep tech. And we have this, humanity-centric AI framework in play, right? We come up with new kind of companies, right? And so let's say $10 billion fund of fund, and we say that, okay, whatever daughter funds are there, so all these venture funds can be daughter funds of this fund of fund.
Okay.
They have to raise further funds, right? So this $10 billion or $5 billion creates an additional, let's say, pool of $100 billion.
Okay.
Right? $100 billion goes in, right, into these startups which are all on a unique playbook, right? And if we say that capital efficiency is 10x, right? So we are creating a $1 trillion economy, right? So $10 billion multiplied by 10, have a $1 trillion economy. Now, $1 trillion economy has enough legs and critical mass that it can be a sustainable, viable alternate to US and China, right? So this is the playbook that we all have to come together and play it out.
Now, when you start becoming a viable alternative to the US, you're going to be hit with sanctions or something, right?
Why not? I mean, let them adopt it, because my sense is that this model is better for humanity. So I'm sure that there are wise minds in
but they have a
US
different
as well.
They have a different way of looking at things. They are a capitalistic country. We are a different culture.
Maybe we need to change the primary mode of business model as well. Maybe the cooperative models need to succeed. So maybe the right business model for AI is cooperative model. So maybe a different kind of a model.
So I'm just looking at what are the potential challenges. So if India suddenly starts emerging as a big AI power, we're going to need a lot of GPUs. We're going to need the NVIDIA GPUs. Will we have them manufactured here, or will we have to import them?
I think there's a whole bunch of action that is happening on the semiconductor mission as well.
Of course,
right?
yes.
So I think at some point of time, I mean, given that we have 1.4 billion people, right? If they start, exercising universal basic intelligence of some level, we are going to have a lot of queries, right? So definitely we need to create our own inferencing chip, whether we create it in collaboration with NVIDIA, maybe new kind of chips could come up as well, right? So you could be having neuromorphic chips come up, right?
So we're going to have to do it very quickly, very rapidly.
we have to do it very quickly. I don't think we have much space left. We are in some sense late to the game.
We are.
But maybe with just like the way with UPI, right? We
That's
were
okay. Yeah.
much late to the game, right? Credit cards and other things came much early.
Yeah,
right?
But
we could leapfrog.
You don't always have to be the first mover to win at the end.
But you have to be a unique player.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot win this world by being a follower or a fast follower.
You have to be leader.
Yeah. So you have to create your own rules.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
You can't defeat a sumo player by, you have to probably change the rules of the game.
Right.
So my sense is that for us, we would have to change the rules of the game. We need to make it, and I think it's not just us that needs to do it. I think it's much larger. I think it's not just like when I say, it might sound a bit odd as well, but I think we probably need to do it for humanity as a species. Right? I mean, I think we need to take a special approach.
Yes.
I think this may not be just about India. I think it's
about humanity.
It's about humanity. I think we need to create space for humanity.
As long as you look at human beings as assets or resources, you're going to exploit them.
Yeah.
But if we look at it a different way, then
exactly. If you go back to works of Sri Aurobindo, right? It's fascinating. I mean, I've been trying to read him for a while now, right? I first picked up his book on integral yoga in 2004. First I ventured to see Aurobindo. If you have not gone to Aurobindo, you should go. I mean, it's probably it's said that that's the space that belongs to humanity.
Okay.
It's shaped in. So the original plan of Aurobindo was in shape of a galaxy.
Galaxy.
Yeah. So the idea was like the human potential will transform and go intergalactic. I mean, before Elon Musk talked about interplanet. I mean, we have probably had people 150 years back talked about the same thing.
Yes.
But it's very unique because he talked about human form as a transient form, and that you will go up from lower order of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to a higher order. Right? So the human potential is much greater than just doing the jobs or the chores, right?
Yes.
Maybe we are supposed to travel not just outward in the galaxy, but also to travel inward into ourselves, right? And as we will have more and more time available with automation and other things, one, of course, worldview is that we can become scroller human, we can keep scrolling, but
like the Matrix.
Right? Or we could go inward and we could explore the deepest potential, the things that we have not explored, right? Through meditation, going deeper inside, through not just inquiry, but reflection, deep reflection. In fact, a lot of the new advances in AI are coming because, the reasoning models are coming, we're able to reflect at a very shallow level right now. But if AI can show that that's the way to access higher intelligence, there are a whole bunch of literature over thousands of years, and with Aurobindo, laying it out very clearly, maybe that's the path we need to go in, right? So as AI is evolving, maybe we also need to evolve, right? Yeah. And we need to push ourselves and say, okay, we're not here to just do the jobs. Maybe we are here to, explore the planet outside or inside.
Explore the inner and outer universes. So we've got to use AI as a tool, not turn AI into a master.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what needs to happen, right?
Yeah, I think it could be a great push to explore for humanity. So, and that's where I'm very positive that maybe something good could come out of India, right? Maybe that could be the template for humanity, right? That could be something that could allow us not just to, as you rightly said, AI to become our master, but we sort of like co-explorers, co-evolution, passengers of this massive opportunity. So in some ways, I'll give you a perspective. Last 4 years, I've been trying to meditate and super hard, right? Because you have to go through these physical transformations, right? You have to change the way you eat, the change way you sleep, right? The change way you do things, right? So you literally have to train your brain in a different way, right? So there is, I went through all the texts and everything which talked about like how do you go deeper into meditation.
Okay.
I went through different schools. I went to Bihar School of Yoga.
I see.
I went and went to Aurobindo to understand how he talked about it, because he was one of the rare folks who not only went through the path but also wrote about it. Most of the people who go through that path, they don't write about it, right?
Yeah.
They're beyond that, right? So, but he wrote. In fact, there's a very nice book in which he talks about the secrets of Veda. It's like Veda is, typically we think it's all rituals and all, but what's the hidden meaning behind Veda? What does it mean? How does it relate to a higher level of intelligence and everything? It's very interesting to, read him, because one, he talked about it, or he wrote about it. He wrote it in his own voice. See, a lot of commentaries that you go through of older text, right? They are by people who are coming from different culture, right? Who probably have not gone through the whole path. So they're writing, but they're not writing with conviction. Whereas he writes with conviction. So it's very interesting. Of course, the other, Sri Ravi Shankar ji has a path and, explored that as well. So gone through multiple things.
So what's your path of choice today?
I think, I don't know. I think I'm trying to, figure out my own path. Maybe, I don't know. But all of them emphasize two things. One is that, see, the human body, the embodied intelligence that we come from, right, is very interesting. So the human mind and body are very deeply intertwined, right? So to really explore that, so you're sort of like limited by what senses tell you to your mind, right? So you're limited by your senses. So there's a physical limit of inquiry, right? So you can't go beyond your senses, right? So if you really want to decouple that, you have to decouple your mind from the body. So there's a very torturous process, right? That not everybody is able to go through, frankly, right? To uniquely feel the mind, irrespective of your senses.
Right.
But AI represents a very interesting opportunity, right? Because you actually have this giant brain or a mind.
Yes.
Right? This is becoming better and better, right? Even if you don't have a body which is decoupled from mind. So traditional yogic path is, it takes 7 years. 7 years to replace each cell in your body with this kind of awareness.
Okay.
So minimum 7 years, right? Anybody who says he's glimpsed enlightenment before 7 years, probably, I don't know, maybe he's blessed, or maybe he's probably fooling someone, right? And then that also yam, ayam, niyam. So you have to really, follow everything in that path, right? So you have to say the right thing. You have to follow all the dharma, everything, right? So you have to do the right thing, right? It's super hard. Do the right thing, stand by that, super hard.
Not for everyone.
Not for everyone. But this giant brain allows everybody to glimpse that, right? So you have a reflection that is showing you where my mind is limited, right? Because you have access to a much bigger mind, right? So what Sri Aurobindo calls a supra mind, right?
Supra mind.
Yeah. So you have access to that. So you could actually have this exploration and a journey, right? Which a lot of people drop off. See, everybody starts with yoga on 1st of Jan, right? By 10th of Jan, either they have retired, hurt, right? Or they've given up, right? It's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's
super hard to be on that path because, being in a grahastha ashram is super hard, right? But imagine if you have a path that is a lot more gentle to you, right? So my sense is that if you have a path through AI, right, which is a lot more gentle to you, you can probably will go a lot more further, right? So maybe if we are able to create, an awareness of this, right, that, AI is evolving, how can I use AI to evolve myself? Right? And I have this access, right? Maybe more people will be able to, explore themselves more deeply. And maybe that's the path as a species we need to take.
Right.
And maybe, India could be originator of that path. Because we're very uniquely positioned.
Indeed.
Right? We have the largest number of brains to create the data, to create the infrastructure. We have the, the human identity infrastructure, which is digitized, right? We can evolve a framework, right? We can align capital behind it, right? And not just to, exploit more of the world, but to travel both outward as well as inwards.
To have a more meaningful life.
I mean, traveling to Mars may not appeal to many people, right? Because Mars is a dead planet.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't fully align with...
It's not for everyone. It's only for the frontier explorers who have that sort of psyche.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Elon Musk might want to live the rest of his life there as either.
Maybe.
Right? But definitely for sure, there are lot of areas within our mind, our brain, our consciousness that we have not explored.
True.
We live this life, half knowing ourselves, right? Ever since I've started meditating, I can see some algorithms in play, right? In real life.
Okay, you've seen the patterns.
It's very interesting, right? Like, you literally in everything that you do, what you're doing, where you're coming from. So the level of awareness is enormous. And that actually allows you to enjoy the life a lot more, right? If you had probably met me 4 or 5 years back, I was a lot more unsettled, right? Like, you want to explore the world, do things, right? But you're like, now like, okay, I can see, okay, this is why it is so, right? So you're more at peace with yourself. So I think humanity as a species deserved to be at peace with itself. We haven't done that so far. We've fought so many wars.
Yeah, it's our history is the history of warfare.
Fighting wars, right? As we keep evolving, maybe we need to evolve to a higher self.
Right. So, if I'm sure many viewers are interested in being a part of the AI in India's AI mission and all that. So how do we do that? How do the viewers do that if they're interested too?
No, absolutely. I think given the massive technology wave is going to be, right? I think nobody can be, you can say that I can ignore AI, right? So definitely it's going to be part of our life. Right? So I would probably look at 3 ways, right? So one is like, personal transformation. I love, you're describing how you've changed your own workflow as a creator, right? You're involved, you're playing with the tools and, while government is laying out a framework, maybe, it will be able to enable universal basic intelligence for everyone, right? But we ourselves have to do a part, right? So we need to learn to co-think with AI, right? So how do we leverage AI, not just as a tool, but as a way of thinking?
Way of thinking, right?
So I think that is so in some sense we used to talk about design thinking, right? So I think I probably like to talk about a term called AI thinking.
Okay.
Right. So we need to leverage AI thinking, right, in probably all aspects of our life. Right. It could be professional life, right? How can I do my job better?
Yes.
Right? It could be even personal life, right? Like, are there things that I could do better? Right?
Yes.
People are leveraging AI as a therapist, as a coach. Maybe not the ChatGPT, but there are others as well, like YSI and others. You could explore them. If you I mean, my daughter, last week she was talking to me about like, a lot of kids find it very difficult to talk to their parents.
Okay.
Because, the generational gap is there and because of that, there is a lot of trauma and strife.
Okay.
Right? So could you come up with an AI middle, mediator?
Mediator.
Right.
Interpreter.
Right. So that they have, cordial relationship, fruitful relationship, right? And I was like, wow, this is super interesting, right? So maybe like you could come up with things that you could think, right? Like, okay, this could solve my problems better. This could, make my job easier, right? So you could come up with your own innovations, right? Third thing that I see as a society, right? I think it's important that we all play our part in laying a fair fair place for everyone, right? Because if AI is only going to benefit a few set of people, I can tell you it is going to be a very unstable world.
Very much.
Right? I know 2047 describes it in a very dystopian terms, but it's very likely, right? So I think it's important that we create, this is a massive transition. It's our chance to actually set right a lot of things that probably did not go the right way in the past. So maybe we have a chance to reimagine our society in a completely different way. Learning to learn is the first big, shall I say, vector that is the change vector in our society. Next big vector that I see is that we have to think, not in terms of scarcity, but in terms of abundance. So the whole mindset today is that if I win, the other one has to lose. Right?
Zero-sum game.
Zero-sum game. And it comes from a very fundamental notion that, Adam Smith talked about in The Wealth of the Nation, right? Scarcity of resources.
Scarcity of resources.
So the human resource was the key component earlier, right? But imagine if that's no longer the case. You always have a massive mind to take care, right? So human resource takes a while, right? So it takes 18 years to mature physically, right? Maybe more years.
Maybe
to mature.
until 40 you're still maturing at least.
I don't know whether that but that's the trickiest part. But you could actually have agents that you could train in much shorter period of time, right? So my sense is that everything which has been thought in terms of scarcity, all business models, all the things, right? We think in terms of scarcity, even though we don't realize it. But flipping that thinking to abundance is a whole new ball game. So my sense is that, if you're an innovator, you have a chance to rethink the whole society from that perspective of abundance, right? And given that we don't have much legacy, a lot of economic development still is to happen in India.
Right.
What if we start creating these new kind of companies, new kind of thinking, new kind of evolution of society based on abundance, right?
Right.
That could be a big thing. So how do you shift your thinking from
scarcity
to abundance, right? How do you shift from learning during when you're in school or college to saying learning to learn? Right?
Yeah.
Learning as a core skill.
Yeah.
And say, okay, I learn every day, right? So learning to learn, scarcity to abundance. The third key pillar of transformation that I see is going to be what we call as money to fulfillment.
Money to fulfillment.
Right. So if I see the karma, the way we define it today, the value of exchange of karma is through money. Right. That's how is our society stitched together.
Yes.
Right. But my sense is that in the long term, the value of money is going to die down.
Okay.
Because when you're going to have abundance, right? So the scarcity that used to be there earlier, now it is replaced by abundance. Right? So the interplay between the elements of society may not happen through money.
Okay.
Right? So it may happen through fulfillment. Right? So you have to change your thinking from what makes me more money. I know I'm sitting here in Mumbai, the capital of commerce, and talking about it. But maybe how I have to start thinking what makes me more fulfilled, right? As a person, as a professional, right? And maybe start making choices along with that, right? So even if I have all the money in the world, right? Even Elon Musk, if he eats too many times a day, he will turn into diabetic. Right?
Yeah.
He can't wear too many clothes. He will feel hot, right?
Yeah.
At one point of time, he can only drive one car.
Right.
Maybe it is Tesla or maybe it's cyber car or whatever is there, but cyber truck. But he can only drive one car, right? So my sense is that money is important, right? But over a period of time, its value is going to diminish, right? So if you're a billionaire, please look at fulfillment. Like Bill Gates, give all the wealth away. I think he's super smart. He probably is timing it right. And he's also getting credit for it.
Yes.
Right? That he's going to give away all his wealth because he knows in the long term the value of wealth is actually going to diminish. So if you can actually give wealth away to help accelerate society in this right direction, or maybe not just Indian society but global as well, I think that could be very powerful. So yeah, so you have ARTPARK or other places or Indian Institute of Science or all the IITs, you could donate money to accelerate research in these directions. And so I think fundamentally, I think that AI thinking will involve three things: learning to learn, scarcity to abundance, and money to fulfillment. And these are going to become, right now it sounds a bit futuristic, but it will become the norm.
I think the future is almost here now. The future is almost now.
Yeah, future has been always here.
Yeah, that's right.
As I say. But it is for us to shape it, I think, or maybe say co-shape it. And I think we should have a voice. And all of us have a voice. As a parent, you have a voice. As a kid, you have a voice. As a viewer, you have a voice. As a creator, you have a voice. So maybe we all need to start exercising that voice so that our future generation will say that, we made the right choice. We shouldn't end up like either Matrix or, Blade Runner 2049.
Right. Thank you so much for a fascinating conversation. I learned a lot. I hope the audience learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Abhijit, it was such a pleasure talking to
It
you.
was fun talking to you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.